Hi again, Miss Freeborn here, and this time I'd like to talk with you for this tutorial. I'd like to talk to you about your setup. So that includes how you set up your practice marimba at home and how you set your mallets or hold your mallets in your hands. So I'm just going to put my mallets down for a moment, and when we put the mallets down on the instrument, we really appreciate it if you put your mallets down lengthwise on the keys like this, so that they're following the little gap in between the keys rather than this way on the keys, because then they can roll off and they can fall onto the floor, and in the classroom that means that sometimes they can break, or in your home environment they might break. Somebody can step on them or somebody might trip over them. We certainly don't want that to happen. So if you just put your mallets here, we can talk about how to set up your marimba. Now, one of the things we see a lot when students hand in their practice videos or their performance videos, we see students who are leaning forward, quite a bit forward, playing their marimba. So they might be leaning forward and having to bend over at the waist to play the marimba. That's definitely not how we would like you to practice. Or sometimes we see students lifting their arms up to their upper chest level because their marimba is too high. We also don't want you to practice like that. And we also don't want you to have your marimba on the floor and just be sitting in front of it. That's okay for just figuring out some note patterns, but when you're doing your proper practice sessions, like your technique sessions, your technique building, and your repertoire learning, we want your marimba to be set up properly, because this is how you're going to feel when you're performing. So we want to kind of mimic or replicate or copy the feeling that you're going to have when you're playing properly. So one of the things we say is that we play how we practice, or how we practice is how we play. So you want to set yourself up really well in your practice sessions so that you're, again, kind of copying or mimicking or replicating exactly how you'll feel, or as close to how you'll feel as you can when you perform. That's what every musician sort of strives for. So you want to have your marimba about below your navel, about the level of your hips. Okay, so definitely on the lower end of your torso. You want your marimba to be in line with that. Okay, what that does is it helps your arms stay very loose and very free, and so that your shoulders don't get crunched up or your elbows don't have to go back. We never want to tighten our joints when we're playing any musical instrument, because then that creates tension in our muscles around the joints. And a great rule to remember as a musician, or I think as an athlete, or really just as a human being, is that when our muscles are really, really tense, when they're really holding with a lot of tension, they're not very intelligent muscles. So loose muscles, free joints are very intelligent muscles and joints. And when we have ourselves really holding in a tight position, our body isn't free to move as a whole organism. And that's what we want to achieve when we're playing. So when we're holding our mallets, I'll just come up closer to the camera here. What you want to do is you want to hold the mallet right in the middle. And if you just actually put your mallet in your hand and find a balance point, and then just lightly put your fingers around one side and your thumb around the other side, and then just simply turn over your hand. Now, it's probably going to be, for some of you, a little bit, you'll be holding it a little bit too high. You can see that that's closer to the top of the mallet. We also don't want to hold it too low, okay, because then we have a basic problem with levers and physics, and you're not going to get a lot of power in your playing. Sometimes, only sometimes, we do hold it up here. Okay, that's a bit of a chokehold, but that's for a very specific kind of sound. So what we want to do is hold it kind of in the middle-ish. Okay, so you want, and the thumb will be just loosely placed there, and then the four fingers will be around the mallet. What we don't want is that, and we see a lot of that, pointer finger. The reason is because it creates a lot of tension going up into your forearm, and anywhere there's muscle tension, you're going to have tension in your joint, which means it's not going to move as freely, and you're going to have tension in your elbow, and as soon as that happens, you're really limiting your playing. Okay, so Definitely hold your mallets like this. Okay, we don't want them in a chokehold. We also don't want them way down here. Okay, so just like that. And then we just gently turn over our arms. Now when we're playing, again, we want to keep our joints very loose and very free. We also want our knees to be very loose and free, our ankles, our head, and we want our shoulders just back and relaxed down. We see a lot of players who start playing the marimba like this. They hunch up their shoulders, and now I've just tightened this joint, all the muscles around this joint, which means my body is essentially completely inhibited except for here. And we don't want to just play from our elbow down. We want the whole body, including our knees and our feet. So as you're playing, you'll notice it's okay to walk from one side of the marimba to the next, or to lean on one knee. Okay, so we want to have the freedom of moving what we call laterally from side to side. We don't just want to stand in the middle and then reach over here and reach over here, because that actually tenses up the joints. Again, back to tense joints, which is not what we want. It can tense up the knee joint, it can tense up our hip joint, and then we're inhibited instead of feeling very open and very free when we play. Later on, when you get a little bit more advanced, you will learn about a wrist technique. That's for very specific kind of playing. When, for example, we're rolling very fast, because when we're rolling very fast, we still need to keep all these joints loose. And sometimes it looks like these joints aren't loosed if I'm rolling very fast, but they actually are very, very loose right now. Okay, again, you don't want to do that. But later on, you'll learn about playing primarily from the wrist, because the faster you play, the smaller the muscles you need to play. So for example, if I'm playing very slowly with really big hits here, I can play all the way from my shoulder. The back of my shoulder muscle is actually what I'm using to play. You'll see my elbow is moving up and down. My whole arm from the shoulder joint is moving up and down. As we get a little faster in our playing, our mallets have to come down because we need more efficiency in our movements. Again, this is a good physics lesson. So playing from the elbows would be sort of a medium speed. This is still all loose in the shoulder girdle, the neck joint is loose, the knees, the ankles, the feet, everything's very loose, but I'm primarily moving from my elbows. Later on, you'll learn to keep everything still very loose, and you'll learn to notice how close to the keys my mallets now need to get. And also, I'm really using the wrist now, the smaller muscles, as my primary center of movement. But for now, when you're starting, we'd like you to please think about all your joints. Think about being like a rag doll, very, very loose and relaxed, and just enough muscle tension to make sure that you're hitting the notes accurately. So I hope that helps as an introduction to the marimba. Please also make sure that where you're practicing is relatively clean and free of clutter, and that it's a quiet place with very good lighting, because when the lighting gets dark, sometimes we fall asleep. And of course, you want to make sure that you have a glass of water or a snack before you practice if you're hungry or thirsty. And if you need your computer while you're practicing, make sure that you don't rest your computer on the marimba, but put your computer in front of you, maybe on a desk or something. And we'll be asking you for feedback about what your practice space looks like at home. So we're excited to see all the different ways that you set yourself up to practice, whether it's an ironing board or a table or a desk or a piano, electric piano stand. We're excited to see what you come up with at home. So happy practicing.